Hi folks, in this quick demonstration I'll be showing you how you can use AWS for local development whenever your machines aren't powerful enough to run a Drupal version. So let's get started. Let me quickly open up the AWS console, and the first thing I want to do is I want to switch to the closest availability zone, that is to my location. For me it's Mumbai because I live in Kashmir. And the next thing I want to do is I want to start a virtual machine. So I'll use EC2 in this case. And then what I'll do is I'll just go to the instances dashboard, and then I'll click on launch instances. So the kind of instance I want is Ubuntu one, so because I'm most familiar with Debian systems. So I'll choose Ubuntu, and so T2 Micro is something that comes under the free tier, but it isn't powerful enough to run a heavy and a resourceful Drupal instance as such. So what I'll go instead with is T2 Medium, which has 2 CPUs and 4 gigs of RAM. So I'll go ahead with this, and then I'll go to configure instance details. Here all the configuration I'll keep as is. I won't change anything as such. Then I'll go to add storage because 8 gigs isn't enough to run a Drupal website. So what I'll do is, even though like 8 gigs is enough, but then installing a bunch of things that we need, 8 GB ends up being less. So that's why we don't need to add any tags. We'll come to the security group at the very end, or while we are setting things up, and yeah, so let's move on, and then all we have to do is click on launch. Let me generate a new key pair. Let's call it Drupal, and I'll download the key pair. So this is downloaded the PEM file, and I'll click on launch instance. Let me also open VS Code, and what I'll do is let me open a new window which has none of the projects selected as such, and the next thing after that would be to open the terminal. So this is opening, and let me meanwhile go to the instance and see if it has started or not. So from what we can tell, it's already running. So I click on this. There's a button called connect here. This sort of guides you through how to sort of connect using the PEM key and the user details and the DNS for the instance. So I'll just copy this thing. Although before this can work, you need to change the permissions of the PEM key file, so we'll do that as well. So let me move the PEM key to the desktop. So this would be drupal.pem to the desktop, and then let me move to the desktop. You have access, so I'll do chmod 4, is it 0400 drupal.pem, right? So this file has now different permissions than before, and all we need to do is just paste in the SSH command that I copied from here. This says like use this PEM key, and this is the user, and this is the DNS for the instance. So after I do this, it will ask me whether I want to continue. I'll say just yes. This will add the record to the known hosts and all, and you can see like we are logged in. So this is all we need to log in. Now the next thing is like, how do you want to set up Drupal? In my case, I prefer to use Lando. So let me see how I can install Lando. So under the Lando documentation, there is something called installation, and under there is Linux. And since Ubuntu is a Debian machine, or a Debian system rather, we'll just use these 2 lines to install Lando. But before that, actually, like before I can do this, I need the Docker Community Edition. So let me go do that first. So what we need is for Linux platform, we want it for Ubuntu. So let me click here, and then let me I prefer install using the repository. So I'll go ahead with these commands. I assume everything is up to date, so I won't run that command, and I'll just install these relevant packages, and most of these are already installed, so there isn't much to be done. Then I'll add the GPG keys The next thing is to add the fingerprints, so I'll add the fingerprint. And quickly moving on, this will install the repository for Docker based on my current release of Linux, and then what we want to install is Docker Community Edition CLI, and Containered. So this will take a few seconds, and then we'll install this thing. It's done, and now I'm installing Docker and its dependencies. Next thing is like basically this is all we need to install Docker, but then I don't want to run Docker using sudo. So what I'll do is I'll add change the user group basically for this. So I'll just copy this command, and let's quickly do that once it completes. So this is done. Let me paste this, and I also want to put in the username, so I'll do who am I. So this permission has been set as well. So let's now install Lando. So these two commands is what we need. This one downloads the Debian file, and this installs the Debian file. So we have already downloaded the Debian file here, or it's rather downloading right now. For some reason this is quite slow, but we'll just give it a few seconds. Lando doesn't like to be run as if you are a sudo user, right? So there might be a situation because we are logged in as a root user. It might ask us to change, like in case you are not using AWS, because by default it doesn't create a root user. So in case you have a root user, in that case you'll have to create a new user and then sort of do take all these steps. But since I ran this, Lando is already installed. So if I run Lando, I can see Lando is there. But if I run like Docker commands like Docker images, I'll get this issue. It says like permission denied. But if I run the same command with sudo, it does work, right? So the change here is that like because we added the user permissions for Docker earlier when we ran this command right here, sudo user mod add Docker to the current user. But the thing is that like until you restart, it wouldn't work. So let's just do logout, right? And then let me log in again. Let's see if that helps. I'm not too sure, but let's see. Yeah, it does work. So the logout is good enough, right? So we have both of these, like Docker and Lando installed. Now let's get Drupal from somewhere, right? Like a repository. So we can go to code.git or other git.drupal code. So from here we can install Drupal. This is a bigger repository, but they should work as well. So what we will do is we'll just copy this URL. I'll say git clone. We'll just do a depth of 1 so that like the git history is minimum and the download is quicker. I think like it's done almost. Yeah, so we have Drupal here. So this is our Drupal site or other Drupal installation, and here we can set up Lando, right? So we'll do Lando init, and we'll tell it that current working directory, this is Drupal 9 because we cloned Drupal version 9.2 here. The web root would be the current directory, unlike composer projects. All the relevant files like index.php and I think like autoload and all of them are here, so we don't need to change the web root, and we'll call it Drupal. So with that we have the configuration file, and we'll do like Lando start next. So this will pull down all the relevant Docker images and all, create the necessary volumes, the network and all. So this is what it's doing right now. We'll give it a few minutes. Okay, so it's installing the PHP, or rather downloading the PHP image, and it's almost done. Now it's starting the servers. Okay, I think it's almost done. It's just waiting for the DB servers to start, and with that we should have a Drupal site up and running. Yeah, I think we do. So if I just take this URL and do a curl on it, right, so at least we should get the installation page, but it seems we are missing the autoload file. So to remedy that, what we'll do is we'll run Lando composer install. So this will download all the dependencies and also then generate the autoload.php file. Okay, so this has been done as well. Let's try to curl, and you see like it's redirecting to the install.php page. So this means the site is up and running, right? So with this we have the site running. The next thing would be and as of now, if we just go back to our instance, so this is our instance. You can directly go to the EC2 dashboard and go to the instance page, click on the instance ID, and here you'll see a few details, right? So the relevant details would be actually here. So there's a public DNS and there's a public IP address, right? So both of these can be used. So if I click on this, this basically would time out because no ports are open, right? So the port 80 isn't open either, right? So only SSH is open, and that's why we are able to SSH. So that means nobody is able to access the site, which also means that this the site running on your EC2 instance is secure, right? So this is fine for now. Before we see the site up and running, right, like we need to configure VSCode. It's not really mandatory, but let's configure it first, and then we'll see how we go about it. So to have your EC2 instance code base synchronized with VSCode, what you need is a couple of modules or other couple of extensions for VSCode. The relevant one are like if you just search for remote dash SSH, remote space dash space SSH, and these two extensions, remote SSH and remote SSH editing configuration files is the ones that we need, and I'll post these two in the description of this video. And I have these installed, that's why you see the missing install button. And once you install these, what you get is icon like this in the sidebar, right? It's called Remote Explorer, and it has SSH targets, right? So these two targets are there, and what we want to do is we want to add a new target. So what you do is we click on this plus button, and you want to put in the SSH command. So the SSH command that we used is basically this one. So what I'll do is just copy this over and paste this here, right? So this is all we need to do, and I'll say put it in the SSH config file, right? And then suddenly you see this thing coming up. What I'll do is like you see this this things opens up, and then you get an option to either open the configuration or connect to the instance. In case you close it by mistake, you can also click on the gear here and click on the config, right? And then what you'll see is we have this thing here as well called this thing that we added recently, right, like just now. And because it's showing the whole address of the instance, we can rename it to say something like say Drupal, right? And then it will show Drupal here. The remaining things are fine, so we don't need to tweak them. Let me now right click on it and say like connect to the host in the current window. What it will do is it will connect. Okay, apparently it's throwing issues with public key, so let's retry. Okay, I think the reason for this is just a second. So because there's a probability that you might also run into this, so let me open VS Code again. So when we configured this, so let me open the configuration. The path of the identity file is relative, and it's relative to where the window is open. So what we'll do is we'll make it absolute. So we'll say like it's in my home directory, and there's on desktop there is this file, right? So then it will be able to find the desktop.pem file. So now let me try to connect to the host. And now it's trying to do that. Once it connects, it will download VSCode server so that it can configure VSCode to work on the instance. So all the extensions, all the things work there, right? So and now it's connected. Once it's connected, you'll see the terminal open automatically, and then there's the option to connect to remote, and you can open folders there. So what I'll do is I'll click on open folder, and I'll select the Drupal folder that we earlier set up there by cloning it from Drupal's Git repository. So now we have the Drupal folder open here, and you can see all the relevant files. All right. So let me open the terminal quickly. And earlier we did like a curl request. So if I just try to do that again, I can see all the files here, like the response, the proper response. And once you connect to the host, right, like remote, you go under the remote explorer, you'll see this thing called ports, and you can forward a post, right, port. And like the Lando port is currently 49159, right? And in case you don't know it, you can do like whenever you do Lando start, you'll see the port numbers, or if the site is already running, you can do Lando info, and at the very top of the output you'll see these URLs, right? And what we'll do is we'll take the port for the HTTP, not the HTTPS, and I'll put it here, and I'll press enter, and suddenly I'll see this. There's a forwarding from the remote port to the local port, and if I click on the earth icon, you can see the site is working on my local, right? And let me just quickly install it, right? So do standard, because it's running on Lando, right? So it would be Drupal 9 all the way here, and then the host would be database. And let's continue, and you can see the site is installing now. Compared to running it on your local, even like if I run a similar setup on my MacBook, which is 16 gigs i7, it's comparatively the same performance, if not slower, on my MacBook. So let me quickly set this up. I wouldn't worry too much about this, because once the recording is done, I'll just delete this instance, but just to complete the installation, and you can see the site is working, right? So the next thing I will do is let me quickly create a theme, and what I want to demonstrate is that we can also have PHP debug or other Xdebug working on this. So what I'll do is I'll first go to the Lando configuration, and if I do like because I've connected to the folder on the SSH, you can see like it says SSH here and then SSH Drupal here, because it says Drupal here because I've named it Drupal here. And the command P is very like it works pretty well as long as you have a decent connection. So if I do like so if I want to open .lando.yaml file, you see like the output is pretty quick. What I want to do is like under configuration, I'll add Xdebug as true, and I'll do a Lando rebuild. Even though there are ways around enabling Xdebug in a easier way, I'll just do this. And meanwhile, what I'll do is I'll create a quick theme. So under theme directory, or rather, let's do this. I'll create custom aws.info.yaml, right? So this is my theme called AWS. The name is AWS core requirement. Like I can't remember it, so I'll have to look it up. Type is theme. So let's do Drupal theme core. So let's just copy this over and save us some time. So this is called core version requirement. So let's copy this whole thing. I think this should be enough, right? And here meanwhile the site has been rebuilt as well, I think, so we should be good. Let's see if I'm missing anything. This is name type we already have, core we already have, and is there anything required? Yeah, base theme. I think like base theme is required in Drupal 9, so we'll just do base theme would be stable, and yeah, that should be all. So let's enable the theme first. We'll go to appearance. Okay, it's taking a few seconds, I guess, probably because we have enabled Xdebug, so the instance gets a bit slow, and then also we did a rebuild as well, so it could be because of that. So let's, if it takes any longer than this, we'll just do a Lando -cr. Okay, I've already done it. So apparently drush isn't available, it seems. Okay, drush isn't exposed, so either I'll have to do it from here. Okay, let's see, like otherwise I'll just do it from the configuration page. That's fine. But yeah, the page is a bit slower. And while this opens, let's go to the extensions page and see if we already have Xdebug installed. So some of the extensions you would have already installed would work, but then some extensions require to be installed on the server itself, and that's why it says install on the install in SSH. And if you look here, like you'll see like PHP Xdebug needs to be installed in the server as well. So I'll install this, and it's installing right now. It seems the site it's quite slow right now, so let's see if the server is working and all. It seems everything is working. And let me see if we have a Drupal binary. So we'll do like vendor bin. We have drush, rather, like we don't have drush, so we can't do like a cache clear, but that's all right. Yeah, the site shouldn't be this slow though. Let's do Lando composer require drush/drush, and let's make it a dev dependency. Let's stop this. Let's open some other pages maybe. Okay, maybe it's installed now. So if I do like a Lando SSH vendor bin drush cr, yeah, the cache rebuild was quite quick. I'm not sure why the site is not working. Or it could be that so because I rebuilt the site, right, so the port might have changed, right? So, and this is something that you'll have to take care of unless you find a better way to bind to a static port, which I haven't spent time looking into, but let me quickly do this, right? So let me okay, it's already bound, is it? Okay, so it's bound here. Now the site is apparently working. Let's see if we can go to the appearance page. Yeah, we can see the AWS theme, so let me do a install and set as default. Hopefully this doesn't throw any errors. Go back to the site. Yeah, it seems to be working, right? And now that we have installed Xdebug, we have also rebuild and enabled Xdebug in the Lando file as well here. So the next thing would be to create a theme file where we can write a preprocess hook. You can also see that like there's no Drupal extension installed, so let me also do that. The one that I use is called Drupal syntax highlighting. So I'll quickly install this, and this thing should sort of take like work as a PHP file. So let's do function AWS preprocess. Let's do HTML, right? And do so I'll add a breakpoint here, and then I'll go to the debug section here, and then because there's no debug configuration, right? You can tell if you have a debug configuration if you have a .vscode and a .vscode folder and a launch.json file in it with PHP configuration, but that's basically missing in this case. So what I'll do is I'll create a launch JSON file, and at the bottom you'll see PHP. This shows up only because we have installed the PHP debug extension. Now it's mostly configured. There's just a few changes that we need to make. The first thing we need to check is what port PHP is running, right? So or rather Xdebug is running. It can be 9000 or 9003. So to check that, what we'll do is we'll do Lando PHP. Just a second. So we'll do Lando PHP -- info grep Xdebug grep port, right? So I think this should help us. Yeah, it says 9003, right? So we'll just change it to 9003. And then also what we want to do is we want to enable path mappings. Do we need to do that? Yeah, I think we do, because this is running in the Ubuntu machine, this VSCode, and then the Drupal application is running in Docker. So /app is the path within Docker, and then the site is running in workspace folder. So this is basically a reference to the place where this VSCode instance is open, which is within the /Drupal directory. You can mention this, or you can basically say like workspace folder. Either way, it's fine, right? So now we have this configuration set up. I'll click on run and debug, right? So you'll see like breakpoints show up here. I want to remove it from everything. We don't want it on everything. We just want it on specifically where we have placed the breakpoint, right? And once we start this, you'll see like if I go here where we forward ports, you automatically see 9003 has been added here, right? You don't want to remove it. You don't want to do anything about it. It should be here though. So right now you see like Xdebug is already enabled. I'm not sure why, but it is. So if I refresh the page, it didn't work. So let's clear caches, because why not? Yeah, the caches are clear, and you see the breakpoint has been activated here. So it has stopped on this location, and you can sort of debug all the details here, right? So, and you can do whatever you want. So with this, I think I wanted to demonstrate that like all of this is possible. Setting up Xdebug usually takes a bit of time, and then also like having it run in such a setup can be a bit tricky. So but then with VS Code it works flawlessly, and as I have shown, or rather demonstrated, that like things work very fluidly. You don't need to, there's no latency. I've tried it on instances running in US as well from my location, and I didn't feel a lot of latency either. But yeah, the closer the instance, the better the performance. And yeah, so from here you can sort of have commit to the repository, and then all you need to do is just click on this icon here, or just go to the remote window here, and then say, I think like just click on this, or rather not, like just don't click on that. Just click on SSH Drupal and close remote connection, right? And you are disconnected from your server. And if you don't necessarily want to continue working and don't want to be charged, what you can do is you can go to your instance, right click and stop the instance. So with this, your instance has stopped and you are not being billed, right? So if you have an on-demand instance which is slightly costlier than spot instance, so now if I try to connect to it, it will say it basically won't be able to connect to it, right? Let's see. Eventually this will time out or throw some errors. Yeah, it's basically not connecting, and you see like it's not able to connect. Now let me go back here. Let me click on launch instance, or rather not launch instance, but rather start instance, because the instance was stopped. Give it a few seconds. It's still stopping, so it might take a few seconds before it can even start. Still stopping. So let me click on start instance. Okay, it says it started, but let's see, still in pending state. Yeah, this might take a few seconds here and there, but yeah, eventually it will come alive. And then let's try a retry connecting to it. Yeah, it's running now, so yeah, it should connect. It did throw an error again. Let me try again. Yeah, now it's no, it's still connecting. Okay, throwing errors again for some reason. It does say initiating here. Let's try to directly SSH. Okay, so this won't work because the location of the file is incorrect. Let me try here once more. It does seem to be working, or rather up. So the error that it's throwing is the time is a timeout basically. So if I quickly so if I go to the desktop and then try the SSH command, let's see if we are able to connect or if there's some other issue. Yeah, it seems like there's some other issue. Okay, the status check is complete now. So let's see, maybe now it works. It doesn't seem like to be working, and let's check the security groups. Yeah, this is open, so this should work, but it's not working. So let me try with a VPN, because time to time I do run into these challenges. But yeah, it doesn't seem to be up. Did something change, or did the IP change for some reason? I don't think it should have. Oh, okay, yeah, it has, because okay, yeah, this is something I didn't realize, but because I had stopped the instance, the IP address, the DNS, and basically the public IP has changed, right? So in this case, in case you have stopped it, you'll have to change the IP address. So let's quickly do that. And this is something, what I'll do is I'll just copy this over, or rather copy this instance public DNS. I'll go to the remote connection section, go to the configuration here, and at the very bottom for the host that I had added, I'll paste the new host ID or the host DNS, and then let's try connecting again. So this thing does change, and yeah, so we are connected. I'll choose the folder to be Drupal, right? And the next thing would be, I don't think Lando would be working, or Docker for that matter would be running any images. So we'll do like a Lando start. So you see, like, the previous two ports that were configured here have changed because it's now 49158. So if I just click on this, it automatically adds it here, but I'll remove the older one, and you see the site is working, right? So if I refresh and all, it works, and I can also go here, listen, and refresh the page. I might need to do a cache clear, so let's quickly do that and see if it's still running. Yeah, and you see, like, the breakpoint starts working. So with that, I think, like, we have demonstrated like how you can run Drupal on a AWS EC2 instance for your local development. This is quite handy also in case you want to run Drupal and do development from your iPad, from any other devices for that matter. The only hard requirement that you have is you need VSCode running, right? And there are a lot of options to run it on the cloud. So Code Sandbox, Stack Blitz, and there are like custom solutions where you can just host VSCode yourself. So all of that is possible, and this is how you would run a Drupal instance. Thank you for watching.